Welcome to the Genius Talk podcast. I'm your host Atul Raj from the bestemailmarketer.com, and today we have Tom Kurdi from richhabits.net.com with us. Tom, thank you so much for joining and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Atul. I appreciate it.
Okay, so for our listeners who don't know you, can you tell them who you are and what do you do?
So I'm an author. I've written about 8 books. The one that most people are familiar with is Rich Habits. Change Your Habits, Change Your Life is another very popular book. Rich Kids, Effortless Wealth, Rich Habits, Poor Habits in Asia and Australia, a very popular book there. And I'm a CPA, certified public accountant. I'm a certified financial planner. I have a master's degree in taxation and I run a CPA firm here in New Jersey.
Okay, so how did Rich Habit start for you?
Well, it began really, the genesis of it started when I had just taken over as president of Serapis and Company, my CPA firm. And one of the business clients came in. He was very upset, very emotional. It's the first time I was really meeting him, and his bank had turned his line of credit into a term loan, so he couldn't access his line of credit anymore. He couldn't make payroll, and he was basically coming in to see if I could get him through my contacts a line of credit. And I said, it's impossible. I can't do that in 3 days. So he broke down, started crying, and he said, what am I doing wrong? And what are your successful clients doing that I'm not doing? And I spent about a couple months in his business trying to understand if he was doing anything different from other clients that we had in the same business. And he wasn't, except his salary was about $40,000 or $50,000 higher than everyone else. And I found out that he had one really bad spending habit, and that was causing him to have to tap his line of credit and increase his salary and all that stuff. So literally one bad habit that came out in a lunch conversation over a couple of beers after I told him I can't find anything other than this, your higher salary. Your salary is about $40,000 higher than everybody else in your industry. And then he told me why, and the spending habit was a really bad thing. And so one habit took him down. He ended up going bankrupt, and I believe he killed himself. So it set me on a course where I interviewed 233 rich people and 128 poor people to find out what they were doing with their time from the minute that they woke up to the minute that they put their head on the pillow at night. And when I was done, I realized that 80% of the data I had gathered on the differences between the rich people and the poor people were just daily habits. And so I started teaching what I began to call the rich habits, poor habits. And I did this over an 18-month period. And a lot of people in the training sessions found it very helpful. And a few of them came up to me and said, I've increased my income over the last year. This good thing happened. This other good thing happened. I've lost 50 pounds, this, that, and the other thing. And they said, you've got to write a book about this stuff. People have to know about these rich habits and these poor habits. And so I had never written a book before, didn't know even how to begin. So I spent about 6 months. I read, I think, about 10 books on how to write books. And then after I felt comfortable, that's a rule of mine. I call it the rule of 3. If I don't know something, I read 3 books about it. And then summarize each book and then summarize the notes. And then I feel competent. And so in this case, I didn't feel competent until I finished reading 10 books. Then I wrote Rich Habits, and we went through several edits, structural edits and grammatical edits and things like that. Rich Habits came out in 2010. Then it's great to write a book. Congratulations, right? But I like to say writing a book is very much like the first serve in a tennis match. The rest of the match is promoting the book. And so I didn't know how to do that either. I ended up doing about 150 radio interviews, and that really helped me understand how to communicate my message and sell books. And then, In 2013, I got an interview with Yahoo Finance. I didn't even know who the person was that was interviewing me, Farnoosh Tarabe. She had a popular show about money and she interviewed me. And when the producer was walking out the door, I said, "Hey, how many hits can I get? You think I'll get?" And I was thinking this will get about, 500,000, a million hits. And she said, "Oh, the most hits we've ever had on this show is 50,000." Well, when the interview came out in a 24-hour period, they had over 2 million hits. And one of the listeners to that interview was Dave Ramsey, who was at the time, he had the largest radio show in the United States. And he tracked me down and he interviewed me. It was only supposed to be a 5-minute segment. It went on for 30 minutes. And that's when everything blew up. I had a CBS interview, a couple of other TV interviews. Money Magazine came knocking on the door. Success Magazine came knocking on the door. I did a proprietary interview with Darren Hardy, who was the editor-in-chief of Success Magazine. And that interview went viral. It was everybody. In fact, I got a phone call from Robin Sharma, who's a bigwig in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
leadership field, and he asked me to come to Toronto. He wanted to interview me, and he wanted me to share my rich habits. And so I got to get on the same stage as I had to follow Richard Branson, if you can believe it. And I was so nervous after I heard Richard Branson speak. I wasn't nervous because he's not a very good speaker. He's a genius, but he's not a very good speaker. He has other talents. And I got up there and I did a great job. And, it's just been ever since. It's really, you found me on another podcast, which is a really big podcast, Entrepreneur on Fire. That was the second interview I had done with John Lee Dumas. I've done other pretty big podcast interviews. I write for Entrepreneur Magazine now. I've written for Success Magazine, for Money Magazine. I've written for a host of big media outlets, CNBC, Business Insider, and so I'm well known. I'm not like Tony. What's his name?
Robbins.
Tony Robbins. I'm not like Tony Robbins yet, but I'm not dead yet either.
Okay, so what are the top three common habits among all the riches?
Well, the number one habit that I found the most interesting was the habit. I'll call it dream setting, or that's what I like to call it, dream setting. It's to have a clear vision of who or what you want to be. And that vision drives your actions. It drives the time that you spend, your activity. And it also forces new habits you didn't have before. It forces learning because you need to learn certain things about your dream that you just don't know. You didn't know anything about. So having a clear vision of who or what you want to be, say 10 or 15 years down the road, I'd say that's the number one rich habit. The number two rich habit is to be self-aware of your thinking and your habits and your emotions. Self-awareness. It's the number one, actually, in rich habits. It's the number one rich habit that I listed because you can't change your habits unless you become self-aware of your habits. The number three rich habit would be reading to learn. And by learn, I mean learning something that's specific to your job or your dream or your goals, your industry that you work in. It can't be just reading to learn something obscure just so you can know something that's outside your marketable skills that you'll never be able to monetize. You have to be able to monetize what you're reading and learning. So reading to learn, I found that 88% of the millionaires in my study, the self-made millionaires in my study, they engaged in this daily reading habit, 30 minutes or more, oftentimes more, but a minimum of 30 minutes.
And what are the some habits that the richest avoid doing?
Even some of the self-made millionaires, although they were, I think about 80% of them did exercise daily. 20% didn't. So, that was a habit. Daily exercise, particularly aerobic exercise, is so critical to success because aerobic exercise forces you to consume more oxygen. And oxygen is critical to oxidation, which is the conversion of glucose into ATP, this form of energy that the brain cell uses. The whole body uses it, but the brain cells in particular. And the more oxygen you have, the more energy you produce. And also, oxygen has another role in the brain. It scrubs out, it absorbs free radicals, which are the electrons that are ripped from the nucleus during the conversion of glucose to ATP. So it has to be cleaned like a janitor has to clean up a mess. The oxygen consumes or attaches itself to these free radicals. And then when we exhale the carbon, carbon dioxide, we exhale those free radicals. So it actually improves your brain, makes it cleaner, and optimizes brain performance.
Okay, and when it comes to poor, like what keep them poor?
I would say primarily they don't have growth habits. Growth habits are critical to breaking free of poverty. In order to go from poverty to the middle class, you have to become a different person. And in order to become a different person, that means you have to change. Growth habits like reading to learn, watching YouTube videos on something related to your field. I built an entire, it doesn't have to be related to your field, it could be a hobby, but I built an entire Irish pub in my backyard watching YouTube videos. So, and that increased the value of my property by about $150,000. I've been told by realtors. Listening to speakers, anything, podcasts, just like reading. I used to listen to books on CD to learn in my car while I was commuting to work back and forth. Growth habits could also include pursuing a dream. In fact, that's probably the best way to grow. I would tell your audience, if you want to change the fastest, pursue some dream because you are going to learn so much along the way. The adversity you face, the mistakes you make, create learning, and they become like scar tissue in the brain, especially if those mistakes cost you money. You never forget them because that loss of money hurts, and you don't want to make that same mistake again. So you're forced to grow and improve and figure out what to do and what not to do when you pursue a dream.
Okay, when you said dream, you mean kind of a, can you describe, like many people have vague dream?
Yeah. It can't be a vague dream. It has to be a very specific dream. You can't say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You have to say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and this is precisely what I'm going to do. You have to say, I want to write music. Okay, fine. What kind of music are you going to write, and how are you going to get it out there? You want to be an author? Fine. You have to learn how to write a book, and then you have to learn how to promote a book. So when you pursue a dream, you're pursuing, typically it's something that's related to, I know how to read and I know how to write. So I can write a book if I have the knowledge, if I gain the knowledge on exactly how to write a book. And the best way to gain experience is to try something that you never did before. Push yourself outside your comfort zone. In comfort zone is your existing skill sets and your knowledge, right? So when you pursue a dream, you're expanding that circle. That comfort zone circle gets bigger and bigger because you gain new skills. You acquire new skills and you acquire new knowledge. And so when you push yourself out of your comfort zone, which is very uncomfortable, but when you're done and you learn something new, that's another tool in your tool belt. And if you keep doing that, your circumference of your comfort zone just keeps growing and growing, and you become better at what you do. And eventually, if you keep pursuing your dream, you become a virtuoso in whatever it is you do because you learn by taking action through the school of hard knocks what to do and what not to do, what works and what doesn't work.
Okay, Tom, so what are you working on right now?
Well, I just came out with a book, an updated version of Rich Habits with Entrepreneur Magazine, believe it or not, Entrepreneur Press, their sister company. So I'm writing for Entrepreneur Magazine. I'm trying to, write articles that are related to the the research in that book. I'm also I have a book coming out. I just finished a book called Rich Habits Wealth Academy. It's sort of the culmination of everything that I've done up to this point on my Rich Habits research, and that's coming out in China. That came out in China in August of 2025, so it's just out there. So that's I'm going to see how that pans out. I have crafted a very long article, actually 17 articles on financial topics, basic financial topics that every individual needs to know in order to become financially literate. So I'm exploring the possibility of writing a book on that. And I continue to write every day. My richhabits.net, if you subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything. You get articles, daily articles, and it's always a different topic. So I continuously doing research and continuously writing new articles or updating old articles for new research that I come across and getting it out there. And, I promote it on social media and TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. So I'm engaged on social media quite a bit. And just continuing to do my reading and my research that helped me understand more about how to accumulate wealth and how to avoid poverty.
So, for someone who want to subscribe, where can they go?
www.richhabits.net.
Okay, Tom, is there anything else that you would like to share?
I'd just like to put it out there to your audience that I came from poverty. I was a janitor while I was going to college. It helped pay for college. I came from nothing. And now I have a house down by the beach in New Jersey. That would have never happened if I hadn't pursued this Rich Habits research, because it helped me to create multiple streams of income, which is another Rich Habits that I found self-millionaires have. So I would say to your audience, it doesn't matter, even doesn't matter your age, as long as you're alive and you have time, you can change the circumstances of your life. I did, and I'm very happy. Now I'm going to continue doing this till the day I die and continue learning and growing and improving and getting the Rich Habits research out there.
That's awesome, Tom. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Atul. Appreciate it.
This is Genius Talk Podcast, and I'm your host Atul Raj from the bestemailmarketer.com, of course. So, speaking of email marketing, if you got some questions, challenges, doubt, or just simply need some help with your email marketing, then reach out to me at atul@thebestemailmarketer.com, and I'll be happy to help.